Today's Monday, it's the 27th of May, it's 2024, and I'm just going to tell you about an email I received today from Sandra from Stoke. Stoke's my hometown, and Sandra enjoys coming on her holidays to Mallorca, but she's been reading the newspapers in the UK today, and what she's read has been pretty disturbing. It concerns a protest that was going on over the weekend on Saturday evening. And I had seen this protest being advertised on Facebook and elsewhere, and I didn't really think too much of it. I took Anita to the airport on Saturday afternoon, and I told her I'd probably go to this protest. In the end, I didn't go, but a lot of other people did go, and something like 10,000 people turned out, according to the local press. Or if you read the Daily Mail, it said 15,000 people, or whatever. There were a lot of people there, and it was organised by a group from a little village called Sinseas in the middle of the town, in the middle of the island. Not one of the main political parties, not one of the main protest groups or the unions, but some group that nobody particularly has ever heard of. And it was actually more about housing than it was about tourism, but tourism seemed to have caught the eye of the press, particularly in the UK. And so Sandra wrote to me concerned that, well, if she was coming here on her holiday in the summer, would she really be welcome? Well, the protest itself was not really aimed at tourists. It was aimed at the government. But the government, because they have allowed tourism to grow over the years, it's just grown faster and faster. And when we first came here, we'd be lucky if we get 10 million visitors to the island in a year. Now we're getting close to 20 million. And all of that means there's a lot of pressure on everything that goes on in the island. There's pressure on the infrastructure, the roads. So we all see it when we get in our cars and we drive around, and it's a lot busier in the summer. There's pressure on the beaches, more and more people going to the beaches. Beaches have got a finite size, they can only hold so many people. And there have been talks of closing some beaches because they're just too crowded. And some of the pictures of people on beaches, I'm wondering, do I really want to go to that? Do I want to be closed like sardines on a beach, having to trample over people to get into the sea? That doesn't make for a comfortable, nice holiday. But the government's allowed this to happen over the years, and this protest was really partly about that. I think a lot of people tagged onto it and said, we're just getting too many people on the island. Now, you may say, well, people's jobs depend on that. They do. A large proportion of the people on the island depend on tourism, either directly or indirectly for their work. And without them, the island wouldn't exist as we know it. But the problem really is to do with mass tourism. It's just having too many people on the island. The island's got this finite size, and we can only cope with so many. And not only do we get the people who are just coming on holidays, one of the other problems we've got is the number of cruise ships that are arriving. And if we've got 3 or 4 or more cruise ships, that can be tens of thousands of passengers arriving every day. And do we have the capacity for that? Do we have a capacity for comfortable tourism? Are these people going to be feeling comfortable as they're walking through the streets shoulder to shoulder? Or when they try to go to the beach and there's no space to put their towel down or no beds free? So the fear is that our capacity is being exceeded. And we do see it. We see it as the cars pile up in the motorways, and we see it as we go to the beach. But there are other things that we don't see, and the more people you have on the island, the more energy you need, the more electricity you need. And so we need to have a better power system. We've got cables actually that come from the mainland now to supply us with power, as well as a small power station near to the airport in Palma. We need water. And during the last few months, the whole of Spain has been suffering from a drought, including Mallorca, though it's not been so bad here. But we need water, and as the number of people on the island doubles during the summer, we obviously need a significant amount of water. And all of that water creates sewage, and that sewage has to be disposed of. These are things that people don't see. There's also the environmental impact of having so many people on the island, so many cars driving in the streets, and so many ships arriving in the port to deposit goods and to deposit passengers. They're producing pollution. And I did read one report which really upset me, with the fact that it said that Palma was one of the most polluted in terms of the air quality in the Mediterranean. And part of that is due to these ships that come into the port. So there is a big environmental impact. The main thing, though, that the protesters were protesting about was property prices. Mallorca's always been more expensive than the mainland. It's been an expensive island since we've been on here. And in recent years, the number of non-residents buying property here has caused the prices to soar to such levels that it's not possible for locals to buy or rent a home. If they're selling to people coming from the outside. And that has meant that these people who live here, their children, can't afford to buy. Now, I read some of the comments in the Daily Mail saying, well, it's their own fault, they're the ones that sold to them. But if you're going to sell your house, you're going to sell it to the highest bidder. If someone offers you €1 million for your house, you're not going to sell it for that lad down the road who needs a house but can only afford €100,000. You're going to sell it for the €1 million. And you think I'm exaggerating the prices. I'm not. A few years ago, locals were buying properties for €100,000, and now they're being offered €1 million for a relatively small plot or a small apartment. It is ridiculous. Just to give you some idea, I went on to the Idealista website, which is the property website covers all of Mallorca. And these are the only 3 properties I could find that were actually for rent. Just look at those prices. While I was on the website, I also had a look at properties for sale. Lots more properties for sale, but again, you just need to have a look at the prices. And that has another effect. It means that people who come to live and work on the island, people we need, the doctors, the nurses, the drivers, the shop assistants, the cleaners, these are people who quite often have to be brought in from the mainland to work. They can't find places to live, they can't find places to buy, they can't find places to rent, and so we're suffering from a lack of certain workers. So when it comes to people going to hotels, the hotels are finding it difficult to find the waiters, the waitresses, the cleaners, the staff who look after you in the hotels, because they can't bring them in. People who normally be coming from the mainland or from other parts of Europe, lots of people came from other parts of Europe, they're not coming this year. They're saying no, there isn't enough money for us to be able to afford to buy or rent somewhere to live. You might say, well, why don't you just pay them more then? Well, the consequence of that is if you pay them more, then the prices go up, and it becomes one long spiral. Now, the government have, in the last few years, been doing something. They have said that they will do things. One thing that has been suggested is simply just to reduce the number of flights to the island. That would help to reduce the number of tourists. One suggestion is to restrict who can actually buy a property on the island. A suggestion was that you had to be a resident for 3 or 4 or 5 years before you could actually buy a property. So you could rent, but you couldn't buy. None of these things have actually come into force. There are suggestions. One thing that did come into force last year, and we did see, was a clampdown on illegal rents. This is the Airbnb type things. In order to rent a property here to tourists, you need to have a license, and that will give you like a little plaque to go on the wall that says ETV, and that means it can be a tourist rental property. If it doesn't have that license, then it's illegal, and both the people who are renting and the people who are actually doing the renting face potential fines.
the fines for someone who rents a property that doesn't have a license can be huge, so much so that they have to sell the property in order to pay the fine. So they have come into effect, but always be careful when you're renting. Make sure that they are advertising the fact that they are legal and that they do have the license. Locals know that the tourists are part of their livelihood, and they want to keep them here, and they want them to have a good time. They want them to go home with a smile on their faces and therefore book for next year. What they don't want is too many people coming to the island. It's a way of reducing the number of people that come, and if limiting the number of flights is the way of doing that, then that's it. Or reducing the number of hotels on the island, so everyone can still come, but we have a full sign. When it's full, you can't come, and I think that would be fair to everyone. What it may mean is an increase in prices, and we're seeing now that a lot of the hotels that were 3 stars are now actually going to be put up to 4 stars, and I can see that the price of hotels is going up and up. And a number of people have already said to me this year that Mallorca is just becoming too expensive. Well, maybe that's how they're going to limit the number of tourists here. Mallorca needs to be, and I think it is, a safe place for people to come to visit and to live. We've lived here for a long time, and we've never really felt any pressure or any reason for it not to be safe. Mallorca does feel to us to be a very safe place to live, and we don't hear about a great deal of crime. We do get crime. You get crime everywhere. You get pickpockets and that sort of thing, but if you're in a crowded situation in any city, I think you're going to get that. But it does feel a safe place. There is a great police presence as you're walking around, and I've witnessed it firsthand, having the police close by. And I think that makes you feel safer. It certainly does for me. So I'm hoping that people can come here and continue to come here, have a happy holiday here, and many more of them to come. And let's hope that the government manages to sort out this housing situation in one way or another. Anyway, that's just my spin on it, and I'm sure there's going to be lots more to come in the news over the next days, weeks, and probably all through the summer. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.